The government set its sights on cutting carbon emissions in the state sector, but admits it has no real information on what impact its own agencies are having on the environment. Figures released to Checkpoint show several of the biggest government departments don't know how much carbon they're creating, and most don't have a plan on how to curb it. Environmentalists and academics say that's not good enough, and if combating climate change is as important as this government claims, it needs to lead from the top.
Climate change is the challenge that defines my generation.
Jacinda Ardern had a bold take on climate change before becoming Prime Minister, but how is that challenge being met in the government's own home, the public sector? Last week it announced $200 million of funding to cut coal burners from schools and hospitals to curb carbon emissions. But beyond those buildings, Climate Change Minister James Shaw admits little is known about the state sector's environmental impact.
Everything starts with having good information, and the problem that most agencies have got is that they haven't even got good information yet, and that's really got to be the first step.
Government agencies have not been mandated to report their carbon emissions, and very few have. Documents released to Checkpoint show the Ministry for Foreign Affairs and Trade, Police, Corrections, the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, and the Ministry for Business, Employment and Innovation confirm they don't have any records for the past 5 years. The Ministry of Health had limited reporting of rental car emissions and flights. The Ministry for Primary Industries had a more comprehensive overview, including energy and travel usage. Perhaps, as expected, Ministry for the Environment had a full breakdown, including the average carbon emissions of each employee. James Shaw says it will take time to get everyone to that level.
The state sector is enormous, right? It occupies almost a third of the economy. It just takes time to get rolling. But, it is clear, particularly now that you've got bipartisan support from across the House on the zero carbon bill, that agencies now know exactly what every other sector of the economy knows, which is that our emissions, that the political leadership of this country is united. Our emissions profile has to come down. Our CO2 emissions in particular have to come down very steeply and very quickly. And the first and easiest place to do that is in the domain of transport. So I guess they've got their marching orders.
James Shaw says the Zero Carbon Act, which commits New Zealand to zero carbon by 2050, sets a clear directive for limiting emissions. He expects the government to start leading by example.
It's important to me that at a time when we're asking everyone in every sector of the economy to make the switch, that government agencies walk the talk and lead by example.
The public sector is estimated to employ around 400,000 people, making up about 18% of New Zealand's total workforce. Dave Frame, the director of the New Zealand Climate Change Research Institute, says they're lagging behind.
It's a little frustrating but and fairly predictable, I think, that the government has probably spent a bit much time burnishing its halo about its ambitious target, rather than actually thinking about how the core functions it oversees are going to have to change as part of reaching that target.
Iwi Leaders Climate Change Group Chair Mike Smith is suing the government over what he says is a failure to act fast enough on climate change. He says the lack of data on the state sector's emissions proves his point.
It is what it is, and that seems to be very little. It's surprising to me to see that in the last 5 years the state sector has done next to nothing. But this means that we can look forward to them now making some real progress, and starting at the top of government, there's lots of great opportunities to lead by example right across the state sector.